you know. Such a pretty smile, I want to see it once in a while. But you were right for me. You were right for me.
Okay, it's time for Real Raw Recovery. I'm Joe Tilley,
I am Tyler Tilley.
and we start this with a moment of silence, followed by the Serenity We prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and wisdom to know the difference. All right, the reading. Reading from the Daily Reflections book. And it's all about, it's okay to be me. It's okay to be me. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. They have turned to easier methods, but they had not learned enough humility. Alcoholics Anonymous, page 7273. Humility sounds so much like humiliation, but it really is the ability to look at myself and honestly accept what I find. I no longer need to be the smartest or dumbest or any other est. Finally, it is okay to be me. It is easier for me to accept myself if I share my whole life. If I cannot share in meetings, then I had better have a sponsor, someone with whom I can share those certain facts that could lead me back to a drunk, to death. I need to take all the steps. I need the fifth step to learn true humility. Easier methods do not work. Humility. Humility. That reminds me of a joke. I would say, like, I'm so humble. I wrote the book on humility. I think I'll call it Joe Tilley, the humblest guy I know.
You know what we really need in our podcast? A laugh track. I think I should add like some sort of app. Right. Because at that point, then the people that are listening will actually know when to laugh or when you're being serious.
Right.
Because they can't differentiate between your jokes and
my truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's always a little bit of truth to the jokes, though, isn't there?
I suppose so.
Yeah. It's kind of like humility is something I have until I think I have it. Like as soon as I think I'm really humble, I'm not humble anymore.
You think that's true?
Well, to an extent, right? Like if I get to this point where, oh man, I'm so humble, I'm probably not. I'm probably going beyond humble.
No, but you wouldn't say that. You would just be like, that was a humble thing of me to do. I think.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah. Hey, I didn't say anything there. That was quite humble of me.
Right.
Those people were talking about me, and those people were saying good things about something, and I was involved in that something, and I didn't say anything about it. That's good. Yeah. But so I mean, I can see where I could see the me before recovery, how being humble would have been impossible. Having any sense of humility would be, first of all, impossible, but secondly, something I would never strive for, because I would want people to think it's all about me, because in my mind it was all about me. You know,
But this
the old
reading
saying,
say, but this
yeah,
reading say, finally, it's okay to be me.
yeah, 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 yeah. But the self-centeredness I'm talking about, that what I really wasn't even aware of. You know, the old saying, I'm not much, but I'm all I think about.
Right.
You know, this idea that because so selfish and self-absorbed and unable to see outside of myself, or even try to, you know, even consider other people's opinions and things like that. So so that was it's nice to not be there anymore. Yeah, because that was another part of it, like getting to the after actually having done a fifth step and coming to the realization that I don't have to be anything I'm not anymore. All I have to do is be me, and that's good enough. You know, and that's got a sense of humility. Yeah.
Are you in a good space today?
Yeah. Yeah. Good space.
Your head's good?
Yeah, my head's good. How about you?
Yeah, but I'm just because it's hard because I assume you're going to say yes, I'm good, but I just um, I I take your words with weight, or I'm not sure what the phrase would be, but I
So
take
if I say I'm doing good, you think it's legit? So you're saying?
no. What I'm saying is I asked you that because I'm going to let it determine the following dialogue or the
Oh,
following
okay.
the direct, because like let's say you said I'm a little off today, or you said
Yeah.
but knowing you, I know you're going to say you're good, right? So but I still, even though I know that you're going to say that, i
Yeah.
still I still ask you, and I still take your words for what face value. What's the, like, I take your word, like I trust what you're saying is true, and you're
Yeah.
not just giving me the standard answer.
The pat answer, but you know what? It's true though. I would have to say that most of the time, if people ask me how I'm doing, and I say good, it's true. I
Right.
am good most of the time, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
because
agree.
right.
But I
I mean,
also
even when I'm a little bit off, I still, I still am doing pretty good. I just, if I'm a little bit off, like I had to, like when we were just talking there, sort of like I just sort of do a little self-centered, like a little, a self-survey, like body scan,
uh-huh.
just to feel if that's true, that I am okay, and I am okay. So
So out of
I don't
10,
feel nothing's popping up that says, oh, you're not okay.
so I'll give you the scale, which you're familiar with, but I'll just give a breakdown. The scale is between 1 and 10. Where are you at? And I got the concept from, I went to a doctor's office, and in the doctor's office at a scale from 0 to 10, how much pain are you in? And then it would give
Yeah.
it different faces, like very severe, extreme, like death would be 10. So I use the same analogy for your state of being. And if 10 is in complete bliss and you're crying, well, you're looking at your hands and staring at yourself in the mirror and just so grateful to be alive, and you can't
Yeah.
contain it, you're in complete bliss. That's a 10. Okay.
Okay.
A 0 is sticking your head in the oven.
Okay.
And so it's important to note that, like, if you're at a 5, you're just as close as to wanting to stick your head in the oven as you are in complete bliss. So you got to really, like, so then therefore it's often, in my experience, most people are going to be hovering around anywhere from like a 6 to a 9, because you're not really close to death. Typically, you can be like
Yeah.
wanting to commit suicide.
Right.
So often most people hover around the 8 mark is the most common, or 7, 7. And
Yeah.
where would you place yourself right now?
I'd say I'd probably place myself in about 8.5.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Great.
8.5. And where are you at?
I'd say 7.2.
7.2. Okay.
And it sounds a little bit almost not pompous, but I really think I can honestly state I know myself so well to like decimal points. And so I think, and can't say this for everyone, but I think a lot of people can do so over time. Like you just know where you're at. Are you good or not? Okay, so and then
Right.
where do you vary on that scale? And if you stop to think about where you're at, you can really determine what you need to adjust or what needs to happen, because based on where you're at. Because if you're at an 8.5, the sky's the limit, because really in theory you're only going to get higher, or you're going to have like a really, like the next few moments are going to be awesome because you're doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
And then like a 7 is just almost like, for me, is like pretty status quo. 7.5, 7.6 probably for me is status quo.
Yeah.
And like I'm good with that, because and so this whole kind of, I went off on a tangent, but it all comes back to is because, again, like if you just were to say, hey, I'm not off, or just like a little lower than an 8.5, then I might change the subject matter of what the next is. So back to the reading, I think I'm going to go forward with what was brought up for me when you read that.
Yeah.
Because like I don't really need to get into this, but it's if you're doing good, well then we can, because then I don't feel, not guilty, but I don't feel like it's almost like I don't feel like I'm attacking anything if you're doing good, because then I know you can take it.
Yeah, and you know what? I just finished booking a guy for like an hour and a half, so I'm in a good place. So I could just, it's a really good spot for me.
So there's a couple things that I found this reading to be a little bit like confused. Just not even nitpicking, because I don't even really want to talk about it, but just like, if I cannot share in meetings, then I had better have a sponsor. I didn't understand like why there would be like an option. And hear me out before you chime in a little bit, because that's just something I read. I thought like that doesn't line up. It would make more sense to say that differently.
Okay.
And I really believe why I'm at a status quo for me is 7.6 is because I wholeheartedly believe in the statement of what it said here. Finally, it's okay to be me. But
Yeah.
there's a hell of a lot of me that needs to change and keep changing. So like it's okay that I'm comfortable in my own skin, if that's what it means to be finally, or it's okay to be me. But there's a lot of work to be done. So it's just like you can have humiliation. You can have humility, and knowing like I'm just another human being, which would really sum up humility. But it's also to know that I have work that I need to do. So I often find like, so even back to the further like, or earlier, it states, where does it say? Oh yeah, humility sounds like so much like humiliation, but it really is the ability to look at myself and honestly accept what I find. And what I would just add to that is that also like, and then even with the serenity prayer, courage to change what I need to. Like I got to change a lot of shit, and I gotta adapt, and I gotta morph, and I got to continue to change. I don't have a big long rant. The last thing I'll say is, for years and years and years, when people would pass around a big book at a meeting, and if it was someone's medallion, they would pass around a big book And you
To
would
sign a page?
you would sign a page, you do whatever. And
Yeah.
I would always state, and I still believe this even now, I would always write, congratulations, whatever, keep changing. Keep changing.
Yeah.
Keep changing. So it's like, this is a statement, and it's not really, there's nothing wrong. I don't think anything I've read was, oh, that's off completely. I'm just going over the reading. And the only thing though, it's like, finally, it's okay to be me. I'm just adding in, like, that's great. That's a good starting point to just be comfortable in your own skin. But there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of changing to do. And there's a lot of adjustments to make. Like, it's that when I read that, I guess I just got the impression, like, that's not the end goal. Like, someone is like, finally, it's okay to be me, period. Okay. That's the beginning.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, that's a great starting off point. A great place to get to. Yeah, and so, if you look at how, if you talk about that change, if you think about how probably, I'm going to assume most people are like me, right? That come into recovery with this idea that, I as much bravado and false pride and everything else, like as much as I wanted people to think that I was okay, and that I thought that it was okay to be me, deep down I felt like I wasn't enough. And so I worked hard at trying to get people to think that I believed that I was enough. Not only that, that I believed that I was pretty freaking special, and that you should believe that too. And I wanted people to believe that I was pretty special.
Mm-hmm.
But that was so much work, and there's so many people that wouldn't believe that, no matter how hard I tried. And the problem is I couldn't really try that hard, because so many of my actions, I really knew that a lot of the actions that I had were really kind of like not showing people that I mattered, more like showing people that I was a jerk. So, trying to live this image of this person that I wanted you to think that I am, and then at the same time being who I am, there was a big discrepancy, and it was a lot of work to try to make you think that I was special, that I was more than I was, because deep down at the very core of me, I think I believed that I was a piece of crap. So yeah, so that was a frustrating, hard. It was lousy to believe that. It was really frustrating and hard to try to live up to an image that of the person that I wanted you to be. And then I think after a while, I just kind of gave up. And tried to believe that I didn't care anymore, but I did. And and so then all of a sudden, not of a sudden, then I get into recovery, and I start to change, and I start to come to the realization that I am okay, just the way I am. I mean, that's just who I am. I am this person that's trying to do the best that I can, and really doing the best that I can. No matter what I'm doing, I'm always doing the best that I can under the circumstances that I'm given. And so is everybody else. So because of that, I don't have to judge so heavily myself and others. And I can just accept that we're all doing the best we can with what we got. And it's enough. It's enough. If I want to do more, I can do more, and I can continue to change in that direction of doing more and wanting more, and being more helpful, being more caring, being a better person all around. I can continue to work at doing that, and so that becomes a goal in recovery to do that, to be that person. But it was also a really important aha moment for me, epiphany, to come to that realization that I'm okay just the way I am. I don't have to change. I don't have to make you think that I'm something I'm not. I don't have to, impress anybody. I don't have to be anything other than the person that I am, and that's enough. I mean, like I said, I can do more, but I don't have to. And I think that's, that was a epiphany that it was for me that meant freedom. I like to say that was like, that day that I realized that my whole life I've been carrying this freaking piano around on my back, and like all of a sudden now the piano's been lifted. And it's a freedom that I've been able to, I got to this free place. And I like it.
So I disagree, but not like aggressively. I think maybe we'll end up having the same beliefs. But so if you're looking at what other people think of you, I suppose you would say, yeah, I'm fine the way I am. But as far as judging yourself, I would state it very differently. And then so you would tell me if you disagree with what I say, is that I'm not okay just the way I am. And there's a lot of work to be done. And I would say versus it being an option, it's mandatory that I make those adjustments and changes. It's not an option that I can just stay the way I'm at, where I'm at.
Yeah, no, it's good change is good, and change is good in recovery. And all, like I said, like working towards being a better person, that's great. I want to do that. But when I come from a place where I'm just a phony and I'm not real because I can't be real because I'm so afraid that if you knew the real me, you wouldn't want to do anything to do with me. Like I'm a piece of crap. But like I have this belief that really, the belief that I have is that I don't measure up. I'm a piece of crap. And if you got to know the real me, you would understand what a piece of crap I am, and you wouldn't want anything to do with me. And you would leave me. And everybody would leave me. And I would die. Which is kind of what I believed about myself. Even though I think that, but that was at a core level that I couldn't get my head around that. Like I would have never said, no, that's what I believe. I believe that. I would never say that. Deep down, I felt it, thought it, but that was at a level that I wasn't able to get my head around. I would have told you that, man, I got it going on. I'm a totally confident, got it going on person, man. Everything's good. Yeah, okay, that's it. Yeah, that's me. I'm perfect. Nothing wrong with me. That's what I would have told you. That's what I would have wanted you to believe, because somehow believing that I was less than perfect was believing that I was a piece of crap. And it's like, and of course I was less than perfect, but somehow admitting that I had flaws or admitting that I even made mistakes was to sort of admit that I was a mistake. Because that's the kind of infantile attitude I had. Like the belief system was so mixed up and messed up. And so, like it was impossible for me to admit that I was wrong, or admit that I even had flaws, or admit that I made mistakes or anything. It was like, I would always justify and say, okay, I got that wrong, because the reason I got that wrong is because this and this and this happened. That's why I got that wrong. And you would have got it wrong too if that's happened to you.
But use today's mentality, because it's hard for me to almost like
Okay, well, what I'm doing is I'm giving you a before, like just giving you some context so that you can, so that, you know, and maybe I'm doing it for myself too, just to, giving it some context so I can understand the difference between how I felt before recovery, how I felt kind of, I guess, maybe early in recovery, and then how I feel today would be later. But so how I felt before recovery was just, I just couldn't admit mistakes. I couldn't be wrong. I was so afraid of the fear of, I had such this great fear of abandonment that I couldn't let people know what I was really all about, because then they would reject me, and then everybody would reject me, and I would be alone. I would die. That's kind of, yeah, that's just basically the gist of it. So, okay, so that's where I was. Then I get to this place where, you know, in recovery, I come to the realization that, you know what, it's okay just to be me, and that's enough, which is what the reading's about. It's okay to be me. That's enough. I don't have to be anything special. I just have to be, and being me is enough. I don't have to make you think that I'm anything more than I'm not. I'm just good the way I am. Boom. And that's like, wow, that, what an enlightenment for me that is to believe at my core that suddenly, okay, I'm okay. You know what? I'm one of God's kids. I'm good enough. I'm just good enough the way I am. I don't have to be anything else. I don't have to be anything I'm not. That's good enough. And so that's great. Stop judging the shit out of myself. Stop beating myself up so much. Stop trying to be something I'm not, etc. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about, getting to that place. So now I get to that place where I feel comfortable in my own skin, and I can be who I am, and I don't have to impress anybody anymore. But at the same time, yes, I do, because I still have some of these character defects that just don't automatically disappear. And so now the goal is to try to get to the place where I'm just happy. I'm comfortable in my own skin, happy with where I'm at, and that's where I want to be. But you know what? I kind of have to do a little bit more now to get there, right? And I have to continue to, like you said, continue to change.
So when you're thinking about how other people think of you, I think it's a great achievement to not care about what other people think of you, and again, to be comfortable in your own skin, especially when referring to what other people's thoughts are of you.
Yes.
Regarding your own vision, like, it's kind of funny. I was thinking, so like, what do you think about the logic of faking it till you make it?
You know what? I think that's good. In you know, because I mean, okay, what does that mean? Okay, like faking. Okay, like for example, I don't really have this God concept down, but I'm going to fake it. I'm going to try to believe in a power grid in myself. And what can I do here? I can see the rooms of AA as power grid myself. So maybe if you look at it in that context, or if when it comes to character defects, you know, the saying acting as if, you know, in the Drop the Rock, for example, it talks about acting as if. So if I start acting as if I'm having these character defects removed, well, then you know what starts to happen is I start to notice, you know what, this character defects are starting to be removed. So that, in a sense, that's kind of like faking it till you make it, right? Acting as if these changes have been made in me, even though, like, part of me thinks, no, haven't changed yet. But I'm acting as if these changes, and then, you know, the next thing you know, I'm not as selfish and self-centered as I was, because I've been acting as if I've been getting out of myself and trying to do things for other people. So I'm sort of faking it till I make it in that regard. If I start to actually do things for other people, stop thinking about myself, stop being so self-absorbed, stop making it all about me, and start to do things for other people, that's faking it till I make it. And the next thing you know, I'm doing things for other people, and I find that I'm enjoying it. And it's a good thing to do, and I'm glad I'm doing it, right?
Do you look at your own legacy? Like, do you still have a drive, and are you driven towards, like, so I brought up faking it till you make it because of, like, before you used to say, I'm all this and that, and act as if. So like when you're under the influence and you're in a world of disease, then it doesn't really compound in your favor, and you're using character defects that aren't suiting you. Now, once you convert and you team up with God, then you use those same, you transmute those same characters and act as if you are the greatest. And in fact, I'm sure you'll know who said this. I am the greatest. I said that even before I knew I was.
Mm-hmm.
You know who said that?
Ellie?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
like what I'm on a kick in my life where it's like our paths are a little, like when I hear you talk about doing something for somebody else, it's such a beautiful thing. And it's so like, I personally know from afar, I suppose at this point, but like I know how much you do for others and how much of your world revolves around giving your time, probably like 99% unconditionally, and sometimes I bite my tongue because it's like I'm in my legacy phase. Like I'm in a phase where it's like, yes, it's really important to get out of your brain for many reasons. Yes, it's really good to give away what you've received. All those tools are in motion, but I'm also equally gift and a curse obsessed with my legacy, my story, my achievements, my direction, my goals, my prosperity. And then there's like points where it's like, okay, maybe I'm doing certain things wrong, where you just gotta let all of that go and then focus on somebody else. That's totally plausible and often necessary. But then I'll read a quote like I just read you. I am the greatest. I said that even before I knew I was. So it's just like kind of combating humility with also like, I want the best gasoline in my tank for my rocket to go as high as possible. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe that's a combination, because even you stated earlier, like, and both, like you said, and both. I think they teach that, like, I heard that phrase a lot in mental health. Mental health. I talk to people who are either counselors or in the mental health industry, and specifically in Canada, and it's a phrase that's been going around a little bit is and both. So like it can be and both. And so what I heard you say is like, okay, yeah, I'm really comfortable with where I'm at. I'm happy with where I'm at. And I also I need to do some changing, right? That's what I kind of summed up what I heard you say.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like, so what I'm contemplating or just talking out loud right now is about like, okay, having humility, but then also stating I'm the greatest. You know what I mean? Like having that balance is really gnarly. And I think that's a topic that's like, I think most people, I think the standard answer is like, well, like, no, you're going to take the path of humility and just be another ant in the anthill. And then there's the element of like, no, I'm going to be the king of the hill. And I tie it in with my age and my, just the way that I'm driven and what attracts me and who I vibe with and where I get inspiration is, I think would differ from you because it's just a different phase. But that's what I initially asked you, like, do you still have that drive? It's like, do you want to be the best sportscaster? Do you want to obviously supersede your fellow comrade? Like, even though you're not going to be a dick about it, but like, you know what I mean? Like, if you look at Ali, like, yeah, you love your opponent, but you're going to beat him.
Well, yeah, okay, so that's interesting because I like what, yeah, this is great. So where, you know, the humility thing is finding a fine line between, maybe it's not such a fine line, I don't know, but the fine line between, like, I think being humble is understanding that I'm one of God's kids, but also understanding that because I'm one of God's kids, I have exceptional abilities. So it just reminded me of the quote by Marianne Williamson. So I just pulled this up, and I think it's appropriate here. Okay, it's the famous quote. Some people have attributed the quote to Nelson Mandela, but I think he quoted Marianne Williamson when he said this. He's our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine, as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So that's kind of what that's what it boils down to it's my fear of something. There's something I'm afraid of about being the best I can be. What is that fear that I have that limits me? So I think that's is that not what you're saying? Kind of, is that where you're kind of coming from?
But it's also just like balancing between. It's kind of like all three things that I was touching on. I don't know if I'll be able to bring it to a simple synopsis, but the concept of like not being okay with where I'm at on purpose. B, having a balance between humility and being the greatest. And then C, acting as if, so it's almost like, which is a fucking lie. So it's like I am like, it's like, okay, so how can you use that tool, fake it till you make it, or act as if for your benefit? But if it's not true yet, as to the earlier quote I said about I'm the greatest, I said that even before I knew I was. So it's like, so what do I want? Like, well, I want to achieve, I want to be, like I remember something came out of my mouth, a couple months ago, and I actually, it didn't come out of my mouth. I wrote it in a text message, but I paused before I sent it, but I went with it. And tell me what you think of this. This guy was trying to buy a bunch of art from me, right? He ended up buying it. But one of the things I said to him, I said, he got me to a point where he was kind of grinding me down on the price and stuff for some pieces. And I just said, I don't even know if I can quote myself, but I said something like, I said, hey, listen, I'm the greatest artist walking in Canada at the moment, walking like alive. I'm the greatest artist currently walking the planet at the moment. So up to you. Something like that.
Yeah, that's great.
Right. But like, and I did have a quick pause before I just shot that off. But I also thought, like, I really want to believe that. So it came to mind. Part of me there, it's a little bit, there's a graph I saw one time, and it kind of sums me up a little bit. Is like one side of the graph, it's two circles, and when you have the two circles overlapping, there's a small portion where they actually overlap. So if you pictured like two circles and then you brought them close together and they touch and then they overlap slightly, one circle states crippling self-doubt. The other circle indicates complete narcissism. And then in the middle where they overlap, there's a small gray area. And in that gray area, it had the word art. So you have this concept of like crippling self-doubt and a complete narcissist. And in the middle somewhere, that fine line where they overlap in that gray area, you create art out of that. And I really like, so yes, at times I can be a complete narcissist, and I have some self-awareness of that. Not, sometimes I can get out of control. And then there's other times where it's the opposite, and I'm useless. Like, it's just not going anywhere. And I don't feel like I'm useless, or like I'm down on myself. And then out of those two, like, radical sides of the spectrum, in the middle somewhere is the creative process and what I'm actually producing. And so I just thought, like,
yeah.
And so when I told him that I'm the greatest artist walking on this side of the planet, or something, I think that's actually what I said. I'm the greatest artist walking this side of the planet. So I tried to have some humility. I didn't say I was the greatest of all time right now. I just said this side of the planet, whatever that means, right?
Yeah.
And I sent it off because it was like, A, I wanted to close the deal. B, I really felt like that at the time, at the moment. And B, I said I was the greatest. I said that even before I knew I was, kind of, or like, acting as if.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's if someone else hears this and he either takes it out of context or just hears that, they might say that's not very humble. And I'm not saying that their opinion matters. I'm just saying I can see how that isn't humble. And so therefore, that's what I'm bringing to the table. Like, so how do you balance, like, no, you know what? Shut your mouth. I know what I'm talking about. This is how it's going to go. When do you play those cards? If you're always acting in a state of humility, then it's kind of like you're the stagnant wheel. Like, so it's just balancing all that shit. Like, no, like, I'm going to make this happen while I'm being humble. It is definitely an art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think what you're talking about there is, what does it matter? Because whether it's humble or not is always going to be, I think, the example you've given here is that is going to be interpreted by the person that is listening. So if I'm with you when you say that, then I hear you say that, I'm going to determine in my own mind whether that's humble or not, based on my own perception, where I'm coming from, what I believe. And so it doesn't matter, because I think if you're going to talk about true humility, I think that's all about what is the motivation, what is, the person who's, saying it is all about. What, when you're saying it, what are you all about? What are you all about at that time? And that's, that can determine whether that's a humble statement or not. And that's the only thing. So somebody listening would hear what you're saying, and they only have their own personal experience to go from. So they draw their own personal experience from that, and use that and say, that doesn't sound very humble to me. Because if they said it, it wouldn't be humble. It wouldn't be humble. If the place that they're coming from, it doesn't seem humble. So only you can make that determination, because you're the one who's saying it, and you know where it's coming from. And maybe even out, like, you could say it and think at the time you're saying it, this is completely humble. This is just like, I'm just telling him a fact based on yada yada yada, and it really is. It really is humble. And then you might look back at it later and go, wow, that wasn't humble, because you're in a different space now, and just what you're thinking and where you're. So what I'm saying is, it's all a matter of perception. It's all a matter of, it's subject to the person's own feelings. It's not, you have to be objective in order to understand it. But the problem is, we are all subjective, because we all, have our own thoughts. We all have our own, place where we come from, perception. And so we may all make that determination. So ultimately, the bottom line is, who cares? Who cares what anybody else thinks? what the important thing is, what do I think? What is my determination of this? And if I'm okay with it, then I'm okay with it. If I think it's humble, it's humble, because it only matters to me anyway.
Maybe what I'm saying though is that even if it's not humble, I'd say it again.
Okay.
So like.
But that's again. You do does everything I say have to be humble? No, because it's not.
And then taking it to the next level would be this: is there a time where not being humble is of value?
Sometimes I'm not fine about blowing my own horn, right? Sometimes I blow my own horn and I think, geez, why am I blowing my own horn? Stop it. And sometimes I blow my own horn and I think, yeah, it's about time I blew my own horn.
Right.
Right. So there's no right or wrong. There's no anything like that. It's just is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of learned that it's really important to be my own lawyer, and it's really important to be my own hype beast, like my own horn blower, as you just mentioned. Like I call it because if you could still, like, let's say I'll give you a scenario, like I'll bring it to my world. Let's say I'm at a gallery and this person comes up to me. You also want to, there's also a way of matching what you're presented with by a patron. Let's say you're at a gallery and there's this individual that comes up to you and he's very humble and quiet, soft spoken. You might want to match that. Mm-hmm. Then there's somebody who comes up to you and is very aggressive, and loud, and you might want to match that in a sense too. And then there's the element of okay, or just be yourself. And if you just end up being yourself and you're a quiet individual, you might lose the sale because you're like, oh man, this is banging work. I'm really interested. And you're like, yeah, well, I just whipped it together. And, it's just like, if you don't become your own hype beast and sell what you're doing or sell who you are and act as if, you might you're letting things slide, and you got to use all this judgment and all this kind of because I do, if someone comes into my shop and they're a little timid and a little bit off put or something, then I'm softer. If someone comes in and is aggressive, then I often match and I stand up a little straighter. It's weird, I'm a bit of a chameleon like that. And then there's other days where I'm not as tuned in. And so that I just am who I am, and I'll say things. I just realized, wow, I can't believe I just said that to that person. I was completely insane. I'll just say whatever. I don't really maybe I'm a little tired or whatever. I just talk, and I'll say things that are egregious and outrageous. And then I realized that lady probably didn't need to hear that. But it's kind of I think. Yeah, I just feel like I've learned to be my own lawyer and be my own hype beast. No one else is going to sell my fucking work better than me. And that might take some grandiosity. And as you said, blowing my own horn, because it's you can buy the art from the guy next to me, or you can buy my work. And then for those who remember, Tommy Boy had learned that too. He was selling his dad's Tommy Boy. I remember that, yeah. He had to learn how to sell it. You can buy my brakes, or you can buy the brakes from so-and-so, but why would I buy your brake? Why would I buy your art? Why would I buy your brake pads? Convince me. And that convincing takes grandiosity, or takes being grandiose. And then it kind of leads back to I am the greatest. I said that even before I knew I was. And so it's just and then I'll take what you said just now. I was well, it doesn't really matter. It is what it is. There's no right or wrong. And then I guess I'll know when I'm being really off, or I'm really acting in What would be the opposite of humility?
Ego.
But see, I don't think there's anything wrong with having an ego. Like, I think it's a balancing. I don't think it's it's not the journey of eliminating the ego. It's learning how to use the ego wisely and to your advantage.
Yeah, but I think when you're placating, when you're just when your sole goal is to feed the ego,
right?
And then it becomes, I think then you're talking about the opposite of humility, and you're just feeding the ego. And when we see people, like, see circumstances where people are really feeding their ego and beyond what's tolerable, we don't like it. But it can be very funny, like, to draw another movie analogy. It's like Step Brothers.
Yeah.
If you think of the ego driven stepbrother, the brother of John C. Reilly,
Will Ferrell.
Sir Will Ferrell. Well, no, the brother of John C. Reilly, right? The fucking Catalina wine mixer.
Oh yeah, right.
Right. So that guy's all about ego and all about material and just feeding the ego, and it's funny, and it can make for like a funny scenario, especially when they start to get their comeuppance, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of what we can use that we see ego, out of control ego, as something that we don't find it desirable to have that, right? We don't find it desirable to have that, and it's funny when we see it, when we can see it like that, when it's out of control like that. But we realize that that is repulsive. That whole thing's repulsive. So we don't want to be like that.
Right.
But at the same time, if we don't blow our own horn, sometimes nobody else is going to do it, and sometimes there's a situation where maybe it requires for me to blow my own horn, and
right.
maybe I'll regret that later, but maybe I won't.
Right.
And maybe it's just it's time to be matter of fact about my abilities here for this particular situation, right?
Right.
And
yeah, that's a good.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like I'm doing. It's probably my favorite scene for that movie. I'm going to take it on a small tangent, but he's with his wife and kids in the car. Okay.
Yeah.
They're driving a Range Rover. The character you're talking about, the brother, and they're Sweet Child of Mine, like Guns N' Roses, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
It comes on the car, and so they all take their turns singing, and the kids are like 10 out of 10 singers, and then he hits his, or I think he sings or whatever, and then the wife sings.
Yeah.
And he's singing, and you can just see him starting to he starts to really start seething and get really angry, and he goes, stop, you're flat, you're fucking flat. All these singing lessons, and this is what you're giving me. And he's like, take it back, and he gives it back to the kid to sing or whatever, but he's just like, that line where he goes, you're flat, you're fucking flat, is just so funny. And he's like, all these singing lessons, and this is all you give me. But like that, I don't feel when I'm certain things I say, I don't feel like I'm in that realm, because I'm not kind of caught up again or what other people are concerned with.
Right.
But I do feel like, I do believe that there is such thing as, like, when you get your shit together and you're in check, then your ego helps you to be driven, and it helps you to maybe giving you the juice you need to say, as you said, speak matter of factly and state what needs to be stated. Like, hey, no, like, this is like, and then I really appreciate, I learned from a few guys. Like, I remember one guy, one of my buddies, he owns a gallery, and he would say things like this, which blew my mind. So a customer would come into his gallery, and they're talking, and then like it's getting near the closing of a sale or a possibility of a sale. And I remember one time he said, you would be stupid if you walked out of here right now without this painting. You would be an idiot.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And it's just kind of like, I appreciate that. Like, I love that kind of like that hype beast and like that mentality. And it's awesome. But you can also take that easily the wrong way.
Right.
Because it's, it's just like an opinion, and it is ego driven, but it comes from a good place. Like for me, it did, because I think it was my work. You know what I mean? Like, you'd be an idiot if you walked out of here without it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so to hear your work talked about like that is, special. And so it made me feel good. I'm sure the customer could have took that either way. Like, you don't know, like, like that's insulting, or, yeah, you're funny and that was a good one, and I'll take the piece. Like, there could have been, there's a lot of ways to take that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's good though. Like it's yeah. There's nothing bad about it. It's kind of just a matter of fact kind of fun thing. Yeah, I like it. Yeah.
Anything? Okay, one thing I'd like just to bring up, because actually I forgot about it, but I felt like I kind of interrupted. I'll have to re-listen to what we said last week, but we brought up the concept of a anecdote.
Yeah.
And I remember you started sharing, and I said, oh no, is this going to be like another one of the week prior where you shared like a story and then it turned out to be tragic?
Right.
And we named it Joe's Inspirational Story. And then last week you were talking about a guy, and I just wanted to give you a little bit more, some more time or some space with that, because I felt like I perhaps cut it off, and you didn't get you just wanted to remember Mike. I believe his name was Mike, right?
Yeah.
So I felt like I definitely could throw in an apology. But it wasn't my intent. I just thought that I didn't give maybe Mike the full opportunity to be shared about, because I remember, all I recall is that you really thought he was a great guy, and he was a immigrant or something, right?
No, he wasn't an immigrant. He was I would say he's probably born and raised in Southern Ontario.
Okay. But he worked at the school, or where did he work? I forget.
He didn't work when I knew him, but before that, at one time, he used to be superintendent, like a job superintendent.
Okay.
Like for a construction company.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then,
what did he want to do?
What did he want to do?
Yeah. Didn't he have a goal?
He wanted to get sober. But he kept struggling. He kept, we go through this stuff, and then he'd struggle, and he just couldn't stop, right? He just couldn't stop, and then he ended up dying, right?
And I think that I remember now. Yeah. I remember now, and I interrupted just like I did now. Sorry, but someone said, "Oh, why'd you take him through the steps?" Right?
Yeah, that was part of one of the issues that I had, is like this idea that something there was something wrong about the way that he was going too early, or he wasn't ready for that. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was a stupid thing, for this person to suggest that that's a problem. One of the reasons that Mike died is because you're taking through the steps. That was the stupid thing. And it's like, no, it's like, of course not. That's not the reason. One of the reasons is he just couldn't he just decided in his mind he just couldn't get it. He couldn't get relief from this horrible shit in his head. And so that's what happened. And the whole thing about working through the steps is getting to a point where you come to the realization by taking the steps that this horrible shit in your head are just thoughts. You know, they're just thoughts, and we can have other thoughts, and we can change those thoughts. And, you know, that's one of the things we learn, you know. And so, you know, going through the steps has the opposite effect, right? Of this belief that you can't have another thought. You know, that's the whole, you know, that's part of the, I mean, you know, it's always nice to have outside help too, right? Not to determine that I know how a person, you know, I'm not a shrink. I'm a person who can help you go through the steps. I'm not a shrink. You know, people who need outside help also need outside help, and something that's not my affair, right? But for me to do my job is to, as a sponsor, is to take people through the steps and help them to experience the joy and the, you know, the peace of mind that comes as a result of that. And for some of us, we need outside help as well. But, you know, to suggest that somebody shouldn't go through the steps is stupid. It's like, if I'm going to get peace and ease and comfort by going through the steps, you know, got to do it. Got to do it. I mean, I may need outside help in addition to that. That would be maybe, sure. But to suggest that, you know, keep people stuck in their sickness and not do the steps is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous notion. That was my opinion on that. So, but that's popped up that was just to remember. That was just something that popped up as I remembered, you know, Mike and what happened. And one person's comment about, oh yeah, you shouldn't have taken him through the steps. What? You shouldn't take him through the steps? Oh yeah, okay. That's why Mike died, because I took him through the steps, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, no.
Yeah, I remember now, like, you brought that up, and I remember chiming in as well, and that's why I just felt like I needed to bring up Mike again, because he didn't get his due when all you wanted to do was just mention him.
Right.
And I felt like we got tangled up in that second conversation. So I'm just bringing it back because I thought that I just owed you that, because I chimed in as well about that. And then I felt like Mike got lost in the tornado of the following conversation. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so that's why I brought up him again. But moving on, did you have any stories that you wanted to talk about this, or any final thoughts?
No, I was going to see if you had anything.
So I'd almost like, I spun it as an anecdote or a remember when or an ode to somebody, but I also think like one of the greatest tools, so it's almost like another, if you want to call it a segment or an option or an idea I have, is like, what's like some of the tools that you have in your tool belt, and discussing them like as a final thought. Like, so what I would do here, for example, I remember one of the greatest tools someone gave me, I heard them share at a meeting, how they prayed to their God and what their God was. So like certain things of like, when you just say, oh, you can believe in whatever, it almost comes back to what fake it till you make it, in the sense that people in the program or in the 12-step programs, they indicate like you pick a God of your understanding, or you find a God of your understanding, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But to hear when other people talk about what that is to them really helps you compile your own creation or your own understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best tools that I received was at a meeting, and I remember it was probably around like 4 years, because it was pretty vivid. It won't come across as dramatic, me retelling it, but it was just simply hearing how she prayed to her God.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a tool that I still carry today. So I have all these tools, and I think it's really important to share my tools with people as much as it is sharing about people I remember or certain stories that I remember. So like tools that I use on a regular basis. For example, earlier I mentioned how I use that tool to gauge where I'm at out of 10. That's a tool I've been carrying for decades almost. I can almost say decade. Like, where are you at? I ask my other friends, my close friends, they know where they're at. And I say like out of 10 and they know what I'm talking about. Where are you at? Because you take a moment to really see where you're at. And you can obviously like beef it up, but if you're just amongst friends or you're talking to somebody you trust, you can be pretty real, especially with yourself. Wait a minute, I feel a little bit of anxiety or I feel a little bit of off. So that would be a tool. So as far as giving me a final thought, either using a tool or an anecdote or a story about somebody in my life, I would go with I guess if I said too much, it would be this. It would be, no, not going to go with that. I'll go with a remember one. There was a guy, I moved to Bangkok after living in Spain for a few months, and I moved to Bangkok, and I thought I'd be in Bangkok for 5 days and then go to Chiang Mai. And 4 years later, I haven't even been to Chiang Mai. But in the first 2 weeks, I went to a meeting and I met a guy in his late 70s, and he was chairing the meeting. And I showed up to the meeting late, and he said, "Don't worry, there's a meeting after this one." And I stuck around, and he just had a really big smile on his face when he greeted me. And some has changed, but especially at that point, I didn't want any friends. I wasn't looking for companionship or fellowship. I was looking just to self-maintain by like getting my medicine from the meeting and like, you know, almost being quite selfish, but also being hyper aware of just where I was at. And again, like the reading said, just being okay with that. And I eventually over time let him in. He was, like I said, in his late 70s with over 40 years of sobriety. And I thought, okay, I am willing to let him become a part of my life. And I ended up having the feelings of, I am grateful that he's allowing me in his life. And I used to grill the shit out of this guy. Like he's got 40 years, and I felt like he was fucking a newcomer sometimes. And, but he was also very wise because he was older. He's been around, and he also had the ability to string 40 years together. So that as much as I would grill him, there would be as much as I would also do more listening, and just being around it in his presence was nice. And he was very generous. He was ultra generous. He bought a painting, and he was very inviting, and he tried his best. And like, I was able to keep it to just me and him having like, I wasn't really interested in always having dinners and lunches with him and his friends. But at that time, I was as much as I was a recluse, I was also very vulnerable. And he really was a great wingman, a fellow traveler, in some senses a sponsor, and a giant in recovery and in the fellowship. And he died, I guess, almost a year ago now. I'm guessing, I'd have to look at the date. And so it was kind of like, he was one of my best friends in Bangkok. And he was just a great man. His name was Robert Duchesne or Duchan. Duchan. His last name's gnarly, but he was an Australian guy. And he definitely, he really helped the fellowship in Bangkok because he had a temper, but he also like suited up and showed up. He's the age where like you got to look good, especially if you're chairing. He always looked dapper, and he always had like his style was really important to him, his fashion, his look, his appearance. What he stated, what he said was very, like he was very tape recorded, but it was healthy. It wasn't, even though he would say the same shit over and over again, it wasn't like he was out to lunch. At least he was saying valuable information as far as I was concerned. And he's the kind of person that like he still, so as much as like I could find faults, he would open them tons of meetings. He was the treasurer. And in a city like Bangkok, where it's very transient and upside down and like a little backwards, he added an element of at least consistency and sanity, even though he was a pretty insane dude at times. But like, it's just, and what another thing was interesting about him is he showed me a late 70-year-old man showed me a lot of vulnerability and a lot of his character defects he exposed to me without, he shared things. Like, I feel like a lot of guys, you'll see one side of them and then you don't see the other, especially in the rooms.
Yeah.
And he allowed me to see both sides.
Right.
And so, and sometimes not on purpose, but other times by allowing me in his life, then I was obviously exposed to certain, not secrets, but just things that were obviously no one else knew about, or very few. And to get that wisdom from a man of that age was brilliant for me.
Yeah,
and
it's real, eh?
And he lived a really great life. So that's my ode to Robert.
Cool. Yeah, I met Robert. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
I can tell, yeah. Nice. Cool.
But it's weird. Sorry, the last thing I'll say is just one of the things I have to attribute to the fellowship for me is like when I grew up in the fellowship, I literally grew up. I matured. I became a man literally in church basements. And from the first meeting until now, it's always been, the demographic has been in their, mid 50s is probably like on average. It might have gone down a little bit over time, but like in general. So I just got to be a sponge and soak up all this wisdom from older people, let alone the fact that they're sober, but just like, how do older people live? What's important to them? What are their priorities? How do they conduct themselves? And how can I utilize their pain and triumphs and take advantage of that? Because like I'm surrounded by now friends that are 30 years older than me, if not more. And I really took advantage of that their wisdom of just life experience.
That's so great that you could do that.
Yeah, that's a gift.
Yeah.
All right, I'm done.
Okay. Serenity prayer. God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, wisdom to know the difference. All right, son, I love you.
Love you too.
Have a glorious day.
You too, Pop.
Have a glorious sleep, I guess.
I will.
Okay.
Bye, Pop.
Bye-bye.